Unser erster Versuch mit einer vierstufigen Rakete des Baumusters Juno 2, das schwere Feld der Erde zu verlassen, ist nicht ganz geglückt. Um das schwere Feld der Erde zu verlassen, braucht man in der Höhe, in der die vierte Stufe ihre Endgeschwindigkeit erreicht, eine Endgeschwindigkeit von 10.970 Metern. Um den Mond zu erreichen, braucht man eine Mindestgeschwindigkeit von 10.840 Meter. Und was wir tatsächlich erhalten haben, ist 10.730. Der Betrag, um den unsere Geschwindigkeit zu klein war, ist daher sehr minimal, aber diese kleinen Unterschiede machen den ganzen Unterschied zwischen Erfolg und Misserfolg auf diesem Gebiet aus. Wenn wir damit weder den Mond erreicht haben, noch das schwere Feld der Erde verlassen konnten, so bedeutet das trotzdem nicht, dass dieser erste Versuch mit dem Juno 2 ein völliger Versager war. Die Nutzlast der obersten Stufe enthielt Strahlungsmessgeräte, die uns zurzeit sehr wertvollen Aufschluss liefern über die Strahlungsintensität in Höhen von mehreren Erdradien von der Erde weg. Unsere Explorer-Satelliten hatten gezeigt, dass in Höhen von oberhalb etwa 1100 Kilometern eine scheinbar sehr gefährliche Strahlungszone beginnt, die auf bemannten Raumflug der Zukunft in bemannten Raumflug in der Zukunft eine große Rolle spielen kann und sehr ernstlich beachtet werden muss. Niemand weiß bisher, wie dieser Strahlungsgürtel abklingt, in dem Maße, als wir weiter von der Erde weggehen. Es sieht so aus, als ob wir mit dem Juno 2, unserem ersten Juno 2 Schuss, eine Höhe von mindestens 64.000 Meilen oder etwas über 100.000 Kilometern erreichen werden. Zurzeit ist unser Messgerät noch im Steigen zu dieser Höhe begriffen. Die Strahlungsmesswerte, die wir zurückbekommen, scheinen sehr brauchbar zu sein, sodass zu erwarten steht, dass wir ein sehr komplettes Bild über den Verlauf der Strahlungsdichte in diesem Strahlungsgürtel bekommen werden, bevor der Flug beendet ist.
So there was that long take at the end, so that they could record the notes, because that's definitely going to be on the test. Wow, fascinating footage. That was Werner von Braun, who was one of the people behind the American space program. We brought him over from Germany, and I have a Disney film where he shows up, and he is talking in English, I believe, to Walt Disney. And I do have some other NASA films where he shows up and he's speaking English. So this is the first time I've actually seen him speak in his mother tongue. Fascinating. So today I'm going to try not to traumatize you like we did Friday. Friday was a crazy day. There were 3 different groups of workers at the archive that I was coordinating with, and I was like, oh, I'll put this film on. Oh, I'll put this film on. Not realizing that Troubled Campers was like an R-rated version of Bad News Bears, and also that I didn't think was going to be a super intense driver safety film designed to gross you out and guilt you out to be a safer driver. We're going to be more chill today. I mean, we might unintentionally ramp it up at some point this week, but that is not the intent. This next film is Indian Crafts, Hopi, Navajo, and Iroquois.
The first people to live in America were the Indians. They made everything they needed from the materials that nature provided. Today, the Hopi, Navajo, and Iroquois, as well as many other Indian groups, still make objects by hand, just as they were made many years ago. The Hopi Indians have always lived in the American Southwest. In the old villages, high on the tops of stony cliffs, Hopi men still weave clothing and blankets on their large looms. Hopi women still gather the leaves of the yucca plant to make baskets. Long ago, baskets were used every day, to carry water, to serve food, even to catch fish. After the leaves are gathered, they're peeled and put into bundles. Hopi women can make many different designs in their baskets by the way they stitch the coils of leaves together or by dyeing the leaves different colors. Basket making is slow work, for the yucca leaves must be moistened often to keep them from drying out. It may take as long as 2 weeks to finish just one basket. Hopi women like to work together, and they enjoy having children nearby. It helps to make the hours pass more quickly. Today, the Hopi use the baskets for decoration or sell them to those who value their beauty. The first step in making Hopi pottery is finding just the right kind of clay. The Hopi woman works the wet clay into long coils with her hands. The coils are wound around and around until a bowl or jar is formed. After the wet clay is shaped, the pot is rubbed and scraped of the wet stone until it is perfectly smooth. A Hopi woman makes her own paints by mixing water with minerals from the earth. Her brushes are made from the yucca plant. Her designs are shapes and curving lines that may remind her of things in nature, such as clouds and birds. To make the pot hard and strong, it must be baked in an oven. Pieces of broken pottery are placed over the pot to protect it from the fire. Then the Hopi potter makes her own oven, usually out of wood or dried sheep's dung. Since there's no thermometer to tell when the pot is done, Hopi women must know from experience when to remove it. The design of Hopi pottery is quite unlike that of any other. From wood that drifts down the rivers in springtime, Hopi men cut and carve kachina dolls for their children. Kachina dolls are used to teach the children about the kachina spirits. Hopi religion teaches that many different kachina spirits bring rain and other good things to the tribe. The children learn to know the kachina dolls by their different costumes, colors, and masks. After the body of the doll has been carved, ears, noses, snouts, or horns may be attached with pegs. The details of the doll's mask and costume are painted on with bright colors. Feathers, headdresses, or jewelry complete the costume. Often, the kachina carries an object. It may be a rattle, a branch, a bow and arrow. Since there are more than 250 different kachina dolls, others are careful to make each doll as perfect as possible. Not far from the villages of the Hopi live another Indian tribe of the Southwest, the Navajo. From the Hopi, the Navajo learned how to weave cloth from sheep's wool. Today, the Navajo are famous for their woven wool blankets and rugs. After the sheep have been sheared, their wool is cleaned and straightened. Then, the long wool fibers are spun on a spindle stick. To spin a thin, strong yarn takes practice and skill. When it's time to dye the yarn, the stove is brought outside. The Navajo still color most of their yarn with dyes that come from plants and berries. Among the Navajo, it is the woman who weaves. As she works at her loom, the Navajo woman plans a design for the weaving in her mind. She never has to write it down or draw a picture of it. To us, the weavings are full of interesting designs. To the Navajo, the stripes say story. A Navajo home may also be a workshop for making jewelry. The first step in making silver jewelry is to carve a design into a block of sandstone. The design is then covered with another block of sandstone, and the two are wrapped together to make a mold. Scraps of silver are melted with a torch. It takes much less time than it did in the old days when silver was melted over a fire. The Navajo silversmith can tell by the color of the melted silver just when it is ready to be poured into the mold. When taken from the mold, the jewelry is rough and not very pretty. It does not yet look like a bracelet. It must be rubbed and filed to make it smooth. Then the soft silver is hammered into a bracelet shape. During this process, the bracelet has picked up dirt and stains. A bath in hot acid removes them. It is almost finished. The final step in making silver jewelry is a careful polishing. Unlike the Hopi and Navajo of the dry Southwest, the Iroquois Indians settled in the forests of northeastern America. One of the oldest traditions of the Iroquois begins with finding a special tree. When a living basswood tree is found, an offering is made to the spirit of the tree. Then, just as they have done for over 300 years, the Iroquois carve a mask from the trunk of the tree. The mask, called a false face, represents an Iroquois spirit who once used its power to help the tribe. The Iroquois believe that when the mask is worn in a ceremonial dance, special powers to cure disease are given to the one who wears it. After the features of the mask have been carved, it is removed from the tree. A carefully made fire burns away the center of the mask. Traditional Iroquois tools are used to finish the details. If the mask is finished in the morning, it is painted red. If it's taken from the tree in the afternoon, the mask is painted black. Only the Iroquois who carves the false face mask may wear it. The crafts of one Indian group are quite different from those of any other, for each object expresses the heritage of one tribe and the thought of one person.
With some nice footage. BFA was when Bailey Films and Film Associates merged. And then years later, they got acquired by Phoenix Films, so it was Phoenix BFA. And then Phoenix BFA acquired Coronet, and then acquired Centron and MTI. And then they got, I feel like, there was this weird shuffle. Anyways, we were scanning a bunch of their stuff, so it's mostly Cornet footage, but we also have a bunch of BFA and Bailey footage too. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what about the boyhood of Abraham Lincoln, and not with like stale live actors recreating. I want to see it animated. So here it is, the Boyhood, oh boy, it's a Monday, of Abraham Lincoln, second edition. Enjoy.
We all know that Abraham Lincoln was a great president of the United States. Many photographs were taken when he was president, but photography hadn't been invented when he was a boy, so we don't have pictures of him then. But what if there was a picture album of Abraham Lincoln's life? And in it were pictures of him in the years before he was grown up. Our album about Abraham Lincoln would probably have a picture of a log cabin. He was born in one in 1809 in Kentucky. And there would be pictures of what Kentucky looked like at that time, the forests and the rivers, hills and mountains. And there would probably be a map to show where they lived in Kentucky across the Ohio River from Indiana. Indiana wasn't a state when Lincoln was born, but it did become one in December of 1816 when Lincoln was almost 9 and on his way there with his family. That's when he had to cross the Ohio on a ferry. Abraham Lincoln would always remember that trip to his new home as one of the hardest experiences of his life. Crossing the river was probably the most dangerous part of the trip. The river was wide and deep, with fast currents. The man ferrying them across probably was good at his job, but it wasn't just the danger of the trip that made it so hard for young Abe. It was a very sad trip for him. He had to leave without being able to say goodbye to his best friend. He had enjoyed many good times and adventures with his friend, like the time they were out in the woods with Abe's dog, and he got into a fight with a wildcat. Or the time Abe fell into Knob Creek, and his friend saved him with a long branch that Abe grabbed hold of. Abe would never forget his best friend. At least he was with his family. His father, Tom, his mother, Nancy, his sister, Sarah, just 2 years older than he was. They were all headed for a new life and new adventures in Indiana at a place called Little Pigeon Creek. And the hardest part of the journey would be getting through the wilderness ahead. In our album, we'd also see his new home, and the woods that were all around, and the land that was cleared, and the little creek. And we'd also see what was so important to Abe that first year in Indiana, the mill, where Abe took corn to be ground into flour. There were always a lot of people waiting their turn to hitch up their horses to the millstone and grind their corn into flour. Abe made many friends here. He liked talking to people, sharing news and stories. People liked talking with Abe, too. His ability to get along well with people, to like them and be liked by them, and to be able to tell a good story, were traits that would stay with him as he grew up. In that first year in Indiana, we'd see pictures of Abe chopping wood because his father taught him how to use an axe. There were trees that had to be cut down, logs that had to be split for fences, a new cabin that had to be built, cleared fields that had to be plowed and planted. During this first year in Indiana, in the autumn of 1818, a terrible thing happened to the Lincoln family. Abe's mother, Nancy, died of what they called the milk sickness. It was caused by drinking milk from cows that had eaten certain poisonous plants. People didn't know about the poisonous plants then. Abe helped his father build his mother's coffin. And so, when Abe was 9 and his sister Sarah 11, they were without a mother. Grieving over their mother's death brought them closer together. The next year was a hard one for the Lincolns. Sarah had to do all the work that a grown woman was expected to do in those pioneer days. And Abe worked with his father Tom in the fields. Working helped ease the sorrow they all felt. But the pictures from the year 1819 would show a much happier family. Tom Lincoln had gone back to Kentucky and married a widow, Sarah Bush Johnston, and then brought her and her 3 children back with him a few weeks before Christmas. She was a kind, loving woman who would be a good mother to Abe and Sarah. She encouraged Abe to learn as much as he could. His best teachers were books. Books stimulated Abraham Lincoln's imagination. He would read Aesop's Fables, Robinson Crusoe. He'd read stories about real and imaginary people. Among them would be people who had shaped the history of the United States, like Benjamin Franklin. And he would read of one man who would become a hero for him, George Washington. Abe educated himself by reading every book he could find. Some people said he mastered what he read by putting it into his own words. Now, the pictures in our album would show life in the wilderness. Abe working in the fields, chopping down trees and splitting logs for cabins and fences for new settlers. All the different kinds of jobs the growing Abe Lincoln did during the next few years on his family's farm and on neighbors' farms. And so young Abe worked and grew taller and stronger. He became well known for his strength and his skill with an axe. By the time he was 14, he was nearly 6 feet tall and very popular in his community. This was the time when he began stopping at a country store about 2 miles from the Lincoln cabin. People who came to the store enjoyed listening to the stories that 14-year-old Abraham Lincoln told. They enjoyed talking with him and hearing what he had to say. People talked about politics and discussed what was in the newspapers. Sometimes he even worked in the store for the owner. People in pioneer communities all around became acquainted with young Abe Lincoln and liked him. And so the pictures in our album will show time passing, people working, Abe growing up. When Abe was 18 years old, there was another great tragedy in his life. His only sister, Sarah, died. He mourned her loss deeply. That year of 1828, another event occurred that would have an important effect on Abraham Lincoln's future. He built a flat-bottomed boat called a scow. He carried people and their baggage from the Indiana shore of the Ohio River out to the steamboats waiting for them in midstream, where the river was deep. And from the boats, back to shore. But the owners of a ferry boat from the Kentucky side of the river felt he was competing with them unfairly, so they took Abe to court. It would have been illegal for Abe to have taken passengers all the way across the Ohio River from Indiana to Kentucky. But Abe convinced the judge that he was carrying passengers only to the middle of the river, so he wasn't breaking any law. This experience got Abe very interested in law and the courts. And he would row across the river and attend the court frequently in Kentucky when it was in session. Abe's interest in the law would eventually lead him to become a state representative, and later, a lawyer. A year later, when Abe was 19, he made his first trip down the Mississippi to New Orleans. A storekeeper hired him to move some goods down the river to be sold in New Orleans. Abe went with the man's son. This was his first experience in a great city. In New Orleans, Lincoln saw a slave auction for the first time. Humans were sold like animals. He had never seen anything like this before. It's said that watching the slave auction helped him decide to try to end slavery if he ever got the chance. Abe turned 20 while he was in New Orleans. Until he was 21, all that he earned from the different jobs he did had to go to his father. That was the law. And then, in February of 1830, he turned 21. Now he was free to leave home and earn money for himself. He had reached his full height of 6 feet 4 inches. But that year, Abe's father, Tom, decided to move the family to Illinois. It had become a state in 1818. They settled in the central part of the state. Even though Abe was free to go off on his own now, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his life. So he stayed with his family to help build a new log cabin and to help make fence rails to close in their new land. And then, after his family moved again, 22-year-old Abraham Lincoln finally left home. He set off with his stepbrother and a cousin for nearby New Salem, Illinois, to take a job at a store. His boyhood was over. Now Abraham Lincoln was a man. He had no clear idea of what he wanted to do with his life. He thought of himself as homely and awkward, but he had learned to laugh at himself and himself by reading and talking with people who had a wider experience than he did. He believed in himself and in what he could do. Although he was modest, he was very ambitious. But in this year of 1831, when Abraham Lincoln was 22 years old, he had no idea of how far his ambition would take him. He had no idea that one day he would become the 16th President of the United States.
Was it better animated? I mean, it was just barely animated in my mind. In 1992, this is what's crazy. So that's when I started collecting films. I've said this before, that were considered obsolete, and yet they were still being made. So that media was already beginning to go out the door, being replaced, of course, by videotape. And there's theories about why things are still distributed on film. Part of it was that there still was an established base of places, excuse me, that had film libraries, and they weren't beginning to take on big collections of video yet. That would probably change within the next couple of years. And so, yeah, you would do stuff. And that one was, I think it was entirely shot on and edited in film, and then output to film, and then they probably transferred it to video at some point. Speaking of animation, here's our good friend. Enjoy.
Wesley, calling Wesley. The Weather Bureau of Investigation is calling Wesley. Are you there, Wesley?
This is Wesley, sir.
Are you ready for another day of training?
Yes, sir.
You're doing well, Wesley. Soon you'll be a real agent like all of us at the WBI, not just an agent in training.
What is my assignment today, sir?
Storms. Wesley, come in, please, Wesley.
I can hardly hear you, sir.
What's that noise, Wesley? I can hardly hear you.
I'm out in a hurricane, sir, and I've never seen wind and waves like this before.
Take shelter, Wesley, immediately.
Yes, sir.
Are you in some safe place now, Wesley?
Yes, sir. This is where the civil defense people sent me.
Good. Now stay there until the storm is over and contact me then.
This is Wesley calling WBI headquarters.
Hello, Wesley. Have things calmed down?
Yes, sir. They told me it's safe to come out now. That was quite a storm. There's a lot of damage all over.
We've traced your signal and know where you are. I'm sending one of the Bureau's trucks to pick you up.
I'm in the truck, sir. Where am I being taken?
To the local branch of the WBI. Readings from weather instruments are fed into our computers here. We also get information from weather satellites. Look at your weather watch. Here's how one of these satellites looks spinning in orbit high over the Earth. Weather satellites send us pictures of changing cloud patterns in our atmosphere. These pictures are sped up and continually repeated to allow meteorologists to examine particular areas of clouds closely. Fred, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Fred is our chief satellite monitor. Fred, show Wesley how the hurricane looked from space when you first saw it developing.
It's on the screen now, sir.
This movement is repeating like the cloud movement I showed you before.
Are those clouds?
That's right. Spiraling winds have blown the clouds into that pattern. Hurricanes start over warm ocean waters. Hurricane spotters, like Fred, look for these cloud patterns during the months when the ocean waters here are the warmest, between the months of June and November, but most often in September.
I know that clouds form when warm, moist air rises and cools, but that doesn't explain why the winds spiral, or why they're so strong.
Look at your weather watch, Wesley. We still have a lot to learn about the process, but in general, what happens is this. The warm air rises and the clouds form, as you said. Because the ocean can supply a large amount of moisture to the air, more and more clouds form. A thunderstorm begins out in the ocean. Now, because of the rotation of the Earth, the rising air begins to spin and move the clouds into a spiral pattern. Winds pick up energy from the warm, moist air. When the winds reach 75 miles per hour, the storm is officially called a hurricane. Clouds form in layers around the center of the spiral, which is called the eye. The storm grows in size until it may be as much as 300 to 500 miles across, with winds around the eye blowing at 200 miles an hour or more. Heavy rains fall, and the strong winds produce high waves. The hurricane moves slowly northwest at about 10 miles an hour, pushed by the steady trade winds that blow in that part of the world. You saw the destruction the hurricane can cause when it hits land. But once that happens, it loses its source of energy.
Which is the warm ocean.
That's right. And the land isn't as smooth as the ocean, so that also helps the hurricane lose energy. The hurricane usually breaks up into storms, which you're probably more familiar with.
You mean thunderstorms?
That's right, Wesley. Would you like to take a look at a thunderstorm?
Yes, sir.
Fred, have our driver take Wesley to the weather plane at the airfield, and I'll give the pilot instructions. There's a nice thunderstorm developing in the north-central part of the country where a lot of thunderstorm activity occurs. You should be there in a few hours. Thunderstorms are a lot more common than hurricanes. They can form over land as well as over water. Captain, come in, please.
Yes, sir.
Have you sighted the storm yet?
Yes, sir. Just coming into view. Looks like a big one.
What do you see out there, Wesley?
I see. Looks like a big cloud.
That's a kind of cloud called a thunderhead. Thunderstorms may develop quickly in late afternoon when the air is warmed by the ground that's been warmed by the sun. Look at your weather watch. Here's how a thunderhead grows in speeded up action.
Wow. It looks like the cloud is bubbling up.
It is. Moist air warmed by the land is rising and building the cloud. The warm air rises because it's pushed up by cooler air that flows in under it and starts winds blowing. It's the same thing that happens as a hurricane develops, but on a much smaller scale. While a hurricane can be as much as 500 miles across, a single thunderstorm isn't usually much bigger than about 10 miles across. But the storm can move faster than a hurricane does, around 30 miles an hour, so it may move through an area where you are very quickly. Here in the Midwest, where you are, they're most common in the spring and summer. Captain, take Wesley to an airfield ahead of the storm.
Yes, sir.
Wesley, you'll be able to watch the thunderstorm approach. Well, what do you see, Wesley?
I see that thunderhead I saw from the plane. It's a lot bigger than I thought.
And it's just a part of a row of clouds that form the thunderstorm.
At least I know what to expect. I've been through a lot of thunderstorms.
Thunderstorms are very common. Why, at this very moment, perhaps 2,000 are in progress in different parts of the world.
Wow! Hey, there's what you usually expect, lightning. And there's the thunder. Whoa, I better go inside.
The storm should just about be there by now.
It's here, all right. Here comes the rain. And it's windy, too. It's sort of like what happened in the hurricane, just not as much rain and not nearly as strong winds.
Right. Look at your weather watch again, Wesley. Thunderstorms can blow down trees and power lines and cause flooding, and sometimes produce something that's even more destructive.
What's that?
A tornado. There's a van coming around for you, Wesley. You're going to join 2 meteorologists from the WBI who study tornadoes. There's a tornado watch in your area now. conditions are right for the formation of a tornado. While a thunderstorm may be some 10 miles across, a tornado is much smaller, usually not more than about a quarter of a mile across. Tornadoes form on the southwest rain-free edge of the thunderstorm. Most tornadoes occur in the spring and develop in a storm that's moving toward the northeast. Tornadoes form inside a thunderhead when the winds there begin to spin and pull air into the cloud. Wind speeds increase tremendously. A tornado travels along a narrow path, sometimes dropping down to the ground out of the thunderheads and rising up again in an unpredictable way, often causing great destruction wherever it touches down. Tornado winds get too strong to be measured. They've been estimated to be going as much as 300 miles an hour around the funnel. The funnel gets dark as the tornado picks up dust and dirt from the ground. Fortunately, a tornado has a very short life and affects only a small area. But as you can see, tornadoes can be deadly. Look at the destruction they cause.
Wow, that's terrible.
That's why people have to know where to go to be safe when there's a tornado warning in their area.
Hey, Wesley, look over here, on the left. Wow, a real tornado.
Yes, I just got the report. It's moving away from you, but you'd better take cover anyway.
We're about to do that, sir.
What's happening to your tornado now, Wesley?
It's touching down, sir. And now it's very solid looking, shaped like a funnel cloud.
Good observation, Wesley.
Now it seems to be rising up. It's gone now.
Yes, it is. Well, Wesley, you've had your share of storms today. What can you tell me about them? In what way are tornadoes, thunderstorms, and hurricanes alike? I'll give you some visual help on your weather watch.
Well, storms all seem to be caused by warm, moist air that starts rising rapidly, forming clouds, and supplying energy that makes strong winds blow.
Very good. And how are they different?
Well, hurricanes form over oceans. They're bigger than thunderstorms. And tornadoes are smaller, but much more destructive than thunderstorms over small areas.
Good observations, Wesley. Any questions?
No, sir, just a request. Could you ask the scientist in the van to open the door? They got in and locked me out accidentally, I guess, and it looks like it's going to be raining here pretty soon. In fact, hello in there. Hello? I'm still out here, getting wet. Hello? Hello inside? Hello?
Yes, accidentally. They accidentally left him out. That annoying guy. Oh my gosh. He needs to get soaked so he'll just shut up. Because he's blah, 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 blah. All right, let's learn about Indonesia, the land and the people. Enjoy.
A puppet show. A puppet show in Indonesia. These Indonesians, watching puppets that tell a story centuries old, are citizens of one of the world's newer nations. What kind of people are the Indonesians? How do they live? What is their country like? The first thing we might learn is that this is a country of islands. Islands once called the East Indies. The Republic of Indonesia is a large group of islands extending generally in a west-east direction. The islands lie between the Philippines on the north and Australia, and between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. The equator cuts through the islands. The 3,000 islands of Indonesia extend farther than the distance between the west and east coasts of the United States, more than 3,000 miles. West to east will help us remember some facts about Indonesia. The islands change geographically from west to east. The more fertile islands are Sumatra and Java on the west. Less fertile islands are in the east. Java in the west is often called the Garden Island because of its warm, moist climate, rich soil, and well-kept farms. The soil has been enriched by the ash of volcanoes. Many volcanoes, some still active, are found throughout the islands. As we move eastward toward Australia, the islands, although still warm, get less rainfall. The dry season hinders crop growth here, as the cold season does in temperate lands. Population decreases west to east. Of Indonesia's more than 100 million people, most live on the fertile islands of Sumatra, Java, and Bali. There are fewer people in Kalimantan, most of the island of Borneo, Sulawesi, formerly Celebes, the Moluccas, and West Irian, part of New Guinea. On the islands live people of many kinds. Peoples with different languages and customs were attracted to the islands over a period of thousands of years. The most important are the Malay peoples, who came from the mainland of Asia. They moved generally from west to east through the islands, perhaps as early as 4,000 years ago. Today, Indonesians still use boats called prahus. They are similar to those of the early Malay settlers. About 2,000 years ago, people of India came as priests, craftsmen, and traders. Indian influence was felt most in the western part of Indonesia. Much was learned from India, and we can still see Indian temples on the islands. After the Indians, Muslim traders came, and their religion too was brought to Indonesia. Today, most of the people in Indonesia follow the Muslim faith. Finally, the Europeans came. The Portuguese, first to Malacca, and then on eastward to the Moluccas, the Spice Islands. Following them came the Dutch, rivals for the spice trade of the islands. The Dutch won and held the East Indies as part of their colonial empire. In the cities, European houses like these tell us of centuries of Dutch influences. And so, living in Indonesia today, we find people from many lands, from Europe, from China, from India, and other parts of Asia. Among the Indonesians themselves, there are many different types of people. But these different peoples are all Indonesians. They share the traditions common to all Indonesians. Love of beauty is one Indonesian tradition. Traditional dancing and music are part of everyday life. Graceful movements, not words, are this little dancer's way of telling the traditional stories. People of all ages enjoy the traditional dances and music. Traditional ways are found in the handicrafts, too. This woman of Java is coloring cloth in a process called batik. First, she traces a design in melted wax. Next, the cloth is dyed. The dye does not take on the waxed areas. Later, the wax will be removed. Several times, the process of waxing and dyeing is repeated. The result, a beautiful example of the intricate, colorful patterns which make Javanese batik world famous. Most handicrafts are carried on in villages. For most Indonesians, the village is the traditional center of life. A village is usually a cluster of houses amid fruit and shade trees. A well or two is the source of water for the villagers. There is usually a marketplace for trading goods, including handmade products and foodstuffs. A village usually has a place of worship. These people are attending a Muslim mosque. Religious devotion is a strong tradition. Traditional, too, is the village government. The villagers elect a chief and a council to govern themselves. Close family life is also one of the traditions of these people. The family clan often includes several generations. The whole family works. Drawing water and doing the wash is the job of the women. In the fields surrounding the village, we'll find the men and boys at work. A family farm is often no more than 2 acres. Rice is one of the important food crops grown on most farms. Tasks which sometimes turn into play. These ways of living are traditional in the rural areas. Tradition is a word that helps us understand Indonesia. There is another idea that will help us understand Indonesia. Treasure house. From the fertile islands come products that were once, and still are, a kind of treasure. These are the plants that give us pepper, a valuable spice. Once pepper was as valuable as gold dust in Europe. Today it is still valuable, as is nutmeg, another spice. And so spices that once helped make the East Indies famous are still grown in Indonesia. During colonial times, the Dutch developed plantations and introduced new crops from other continents to Indonesia. From the Americas came such crops as tobacco. These are tobacco seedlings. From the Americas, too, came the cinchona tree. The bark of this tree is the source of quinine, a valuable medicine. The Brazilian rubber tree, another import, is a source of raw rubber. From other lands, the Dutch brought tea plants to Indonesia. Sugarcane has long been an important crop in Indonesia, especially in Java. Coconuts from a native palm tree are the source of copra. Copra is the dried meat of the coconut. Copra is an important source of vegetable oil. Another valuable oil, petroleum, is a leading source of wealth. Petroleum and tin are 2 of Indonesia's chief mineral resources. This is tin ore being mined by a dredging method. To get Indonesia's products to market, transportation is being gradually improved. Today, in some places in the islands, there are modern highways. There are airports for international flights and for domestic flights linking the islands. There are important seaports. This is the city of Jakarta. Jakarta is a collecting point for many of the products we have seen. Products that have given the name Treasure House to Indonesia. The city of Jakarta is the capital of one of the world's newer republics. Indonesians have passed through a period of transition in establishing their independence. Transition from colonial rule to self-rule and self-development. The government is still facing many problems. Overpopulation in Java, for example, is a leading problem. Java, a small island, has over half of Indonesia's more than 100 million people. One solution is to clear and settle larger undeveloped areas, such as those in Sumatra and Kalimantan. Clearing land and building roads opens regions for some of the excess population. Some of the population is being absorbed in the growing cities. Textile making and other light industries employ a number of people and will probably employ many more in the future. The production of quinine and other medicines is one of the older light industries, important to the Indonesian economy. But industries require trained managers and technical skill. That is why there is a great need for more education. Each year sees more and more better equipped schools like this one, for Indonesians know that educating young citizens is one of the most vital needs for the growth of the young nation. We saw that young country, Indonesia, as an island nation extending in a west-east direction between Asia and Australia. Do you remember some of the people who migrated to the islands? Do you remember the importance of tradition in everyday life here? Remember some reasons why Indonesia is considered a treasure house of the East. In colonial times, spices were the most important products. Today, the development of many products, such as rubber, tin, and petroleum, are adding to Indonesian income. And finally, we saw that Indonesia is a nation in transition. Transition from a colonial past to a future as an independent republic in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So if you did a comparison contrast of the two previous films that were made in the early 90s versus this one that was made in 1957, one, it's not animated. Two, the voice, there is a VOG, a voice of God narrator in this one, and I believe in the Boyhood of Abraham Lincoln. But there's more of a dialogue with the understanding weather one. And so you kind of start noticing when you start watching these films, especially ones that cover the same type of information, you see how they change over a period of time and what they try to do to make things more interesting. I mean, if you added gamelan music to any film, automatically you make it better. It's so much better. But thanks for watching today. I very much appreciate your eyeballs. And hopefully there weren't any insane things that I missed. I think we were a little bit more reserved. I think what was happening is, so I had this hard drive at the archive, which had a bunch of stuff on it. I was like, oh, we haven't shown this. Oh, we haven't shown this. And so I scheduled them. And I only just briefly, I knew roughly what they were about, but I didn't watch them all the way through, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And so that's why I knew that what Troubled Campers was about, but I didn't realize it was filled with F-bombs. And also, I didn't realize that I didn't think was filled with horrible footage of car accidents and dead bodies. So, sorry about that. But I appreciate you coming back nonetheless. And we'll be back again tomorrow on Tuesday, and we'll watch more films that aren't so over the top. But we'll get back to the over the top films. It's just 1 and 2 right against each other. I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. But that's what we do. But Jeremy, thank you for donating some cash via the Super Thanks button. That's a great way to support us. Another way is to hit the thumbs up and the like button, or go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are other great ways to say thank you. And then just watch other films that we're putting online. We have so many. We have more than 10,100 films. And we're adding roughly 12 to 13 or more a day. And so, yeah, watch some stuff. All right, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.